There's a story of the brave, dynamic, tenacious, gallant young officer of the infantry.
16 kilometers of different kinds of ridge lines. Today you're attacking here, sometime you're attacking elsewhere. And it just went on and on and on for about 80 odd days.
Initially, we suffered fair number of losses, and it is subsequently when people like that time Brigadier Lakhvinder, they started using Bofors gun in direct firing role, brought in the 100 gun concept and number of other measures, and to totally pulverize the enemy.
We decided to reduce, instead of 6 guns, there was only 1 gun firing. Only 1 gun. And it was dead accurate. Dead accurate.
If Pakistan fires 100 rounds, we must fire 200 rounds. So there were a lot of firing happening on both sides.
Hello and welcome to Financial Express. Today we are celebrating Kargil Vijay Diwas, which is the 26th of July. And today is a day when we remember the 527 martyrs during the 1999 Kargil War. This was the day that the Indian Army recaptured all the military posts in Kargil that had been occupied by the Pakistani troops. And I have a very special panel here with me today, comprising veterans who were there on that very day when we celebrated victory after the Kargil War. So just to quickly introduce the panel, we have Brigadier Amal Astana. He was part of the Gurkha regiment, and he was the officiating CO, and later with 21C. He was part of Operation Vijay, and he was based in the Batak sector. We have General Ashok Kumar, who was an active participant in the 99 Kargil War as well. He was brigade major of the 121 Infantry Brigade Group, responsible for tactical and operational plans, which involved over 5,000 personnel at that point of time. And then we have Major General Lakhvinder, and he was the commander of the 8th Artillery Brigade during the Kargil War. And all of them were there at that point of time, and they all played a key role in helping us get back the Kargil sector, and of course, which is why we celebrate Kargil Vijay Diwas today. Gentlemen, welcome to Financial Express. And of course, I have with me my colleague and veteran defense reporter, Huma Siddiqui, who is, she covers everything defense for the last 3 decades. So welcome to this special webinar on Kargil Vijay Diwas. So if I was to start with Brigadier Astana, if you could just, take us through what happened at that particular time and any special incident that you recall during the Kargil War.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us for this, roundtable discussion in the first place. I'll get straight to the point. There was something very special in our involvement in the Kargil War, to the extent that my unit most of the unit had moved down from Siachen Glacier to Pune. And the last team was going down in buses to go down to Pune. And that is the time when we was kind of stopped in between and said, oh, there is some intrusion in this area, so you go and handle it. So we were about 80 or 90 people at that, soldiers at that time. And from there, you can say, started the Kargil War for us. That was 8th of May. Of course, General Lakhvinder has seen it much longer than us. Hats off to you, sir. And we started from 8th of May, and this kind of battle continued for about, from that day, we came down eventually on the 6th of August. So it's a kind of 90-day battle, continuous. And that is something, which kept us going for a long time. We were a very small, battalion. We were a battalion. But the numbers were, instead of being somewhere around 800, initially we were about 90 to start with. And there were so many challenges, but then, soldiers are meant to overcome challenges. And so the whole kind of, saga of about 90 days was overcoming a number of challenges. There was, I think all of us were grateful to God that God gave us this opportunity. You know, a soldier, when he joins the army, there is a dream that someday I will be able to fight a war for my country. And that opportunity was given to us, and we are grateful for that.
General Lakwinder, if I was to come to you, the artillery played a very crucial role during the Kargil War. And can you just take us through your experience of that time? I know it brings back a lot of memories, but could you take us through your experience, sir?
Thank you for calling me here. Artillery, I think there's a story of the brave, dynamic, tenacious, gallant young officer of the infantry and the soldiers, and of course of the artillery who made a path for victory. When I reached there, I think I was I reached after you reached. I was there on 1st June 1999 and was flying over the great Himalayan ranges. I saw those treacherous hills, bare of any foliage, steep slopes, and I said, my God, it's tough to clear them. I had early experience in Kargil in 1972, and I realized that your capacity to work there came down to 70% of your potential. So I think it was not a good sight to see, and when the thought of it that we're going to fight these people here wasn't very pleasing. And yet, as Asthana says, Indian Army can do impossible, and we did impossible. So therefore, before I reached there, the action, a brigade action, had already taken place in Kargil under Brigadier Amaror. He was a commander, 56th Infantry Brigade, and they tried to take 3 hills on 22nd of May 1999, the Tiger Hill and the Tololing and 0.5140. Unfortunately, even before they were settled down, they were ordered to take these hills, and all their efforts failed, but for Tololing, which they reached halfway through, and then I think 18 grenadiers were there. They held on there tenaciously. So when we reached there, when I found that we had to go up these hills, and seeing what had happened to 18 grenadiers who had started attack on 22nd May, but were only able to reach halfway, and thereafter they could not swallow this defeat, and the very brave people, and they took 2 tenacious actions a week apart to try and capture these heights. One under 2IC, one under company commander. It was a small gap, and they thought it was in stone's throw. But unfortunately, both got mowed down and martyred. And when they martyred, and when this news came to us, I was called to the Corps headquarters. At that time, I was in Tanmark. And the Chief of Staff, Jan Sehota, an armored corps officer, he asked me, probably says, what are you doing? What is artillery doing? Why can't you beat the enemy? So I told him, I said, sir, give me 4 Beaufort regiments, send me there, I'll change the scene. And he looked and asked at me, quite surprised. So I was not boasting because I had served the Beaufort regiment. I commanded Beaufort Brigade, so I knew the capability. And as Providence would have it, this was to happen. So when inducted there, we saw these features, we saw this, and we started planning. We knew that unless we do something out of the box and something dynamic, the infantry soldier will never be able to scale the hills. So this is the premise we started, and I will cover on other aspects as we progress.
Okay, thank you. That really, it actually makes my, skin stand on end when I hear the kind of decisions that were taken at that point of time. General Ashok Kumar, your recollection of what happened at that point of time, and you were involved in a lot of strategy planning. So if you could just take us through how things were at that point of time.
Thanks, Roshan. Firstly, I'm grateful to Financial Express for inviting me to this discussion. And before I share my views, I think it's time for me to salute all those who fought in Kargil, especially those who sacrificed their lives or suffered casualties in some way or the other. Because by all standards, there were certain battles which were fought during Kargil War are unprecedented in history. But having said that, there are large number of larger issues which, have not been debated much, despite the Kargil Review Committee being constituted, number of investigations being conducted in that. So we have to also take stock of our strengths and weaknesses so that we do well for our future conduct of operations. Now, some inputs. If you see, the 1999 Kargil War was the fourth war which India fought with Pakistan. And sadly, this is the only war where the casualties on Indian side were much higher than what Pakistan suffered. Otherwise, the ratio was always the lesser casualties on Indian side and more on Pakistani side, whether you see 47, 48, 65 or 71. There is another important point that in 1971, we almost dismembered Pakistan by creating Bangladesh. And that war is also, it's something which is seen as a most charismatic war in the world history. Despite that, in 1999, when we were fighting with Pakistan, after close to 3 decades later, we could not exhibit that kind of superiority. And you will understand that much more that from Pakistani side, it was some LNI troops, their commandos and some terrorists. A whole of the Pakistan army was not involved. But to respond to that intrusion, India had mobilized a large quantum of troops. So why did that not happen? Some of the things which come to my mind. One is the politico-military direction. I'm sure all those who follow the military history will remember General Manek Shah speaking to then Mrs. Gandhi prior to 1971 war. When he was told to conduct operations in the month of June, he told that it is unsuitable time, and he gave his own reasons of the Chinese possible interaction, the weather being bad, rivers getting sold up and all that. And finally, he advocated December, and the political establishment agreed as per the timing and method as required by army. Now, in case of Kargil, something happened which should not happen in my personal view. Of course, the inputs at the political level, at the higher hierarchy is, much more. And at my level, these are municipal. So I may be wrong in my judgment. But the direction by the political establishment to not cross line of control for removing the intrusion, I think was a big mistake. Why so? Because that the entire terrain was a hilly terrain, and once you are not supposed to cross the line of control, all attacks were supposed to be almost frontal. You trying to negotiate 70 degrees, 80 degrees, 80 degrees plus of gradient, and they were sitting on the higher side, and therefore that is one of the reasons as to why we suffered more casualties. I think there was a option that while removing the intrusion, you can cross LC, but having removed the intrusion, then you be on one side of LC. That would have given much more option for the military to go behind the enemy lines, and with minimum casualties in lesser time frame, they would have done that. That is one point which comes to my mind. Second issue is that none of the agencies, whether the external agencies or the army, nobody had clue as to what has happened in Kargil. Because entire teaching in the armed forces relates to that the enemy has to have a clear objective, some road network, some major objective, and towards that it will make an attempt. It was not in the belief that unheld territories with some depth could be also an objective which could embarrass a nation. And that is what exactly happened. So once the initial inputs came, because initially Kargil Brigade was responsible from Jojila northwards, up to Chorbatla with 4 infantry battalions. Subsequently, when I went there, a bulk of the war was already fought. Dra sector had gone to 1 infantry brigade. The Patalik had gone to another infantry brigade. There were reserve troops, 8 Mountain Dev and General Lakhvinder. Everybody had come there. So that time, Kargil Brigade's area of responsibility was quite shrunk, and in fact there was only 1 intrusion which was to be cleared when I reached there. And before we could launch the operations, the agreement came and the withdrawal of Pakistan was announced. So we had no clue because of that mindset, that enemy has to have that kind of objective. I think, we have to look beyond the World War II vintage teaching and thought process. Of course, a lot has moved in the positive direction. I know I must say now people are talking of hybrid warfare, not of, things which are happening, but at that point of time, it was more a conventional this thing. And since there was no input about the intelligence in real sense, so initially once the inputs came from Batalic sector about some people being seen in the black dress and all that,
Yes.
so it was taken as there's just few people, and then response of the formations also started on those lines. It is once, initial some losses took place and initial probing patrols went to find out the extent, then it was realized it is a major incursion and ingress on part of the Pakistan army. But then initially, because of there was no formal pressure from the political establishment, but there was unsaid pressure both from the army hierarchy and the political hierarchy to clear these intrusions, as early as possible. Because initially, based on the inputs, its mammoth size and difficulties were not, seen. So initially, we, suffered fair number of losses, and it is subsequently when people like that time Brigadier Lakhvinder, they started using Bofors gun in direct firing role, brought in the 100-gun concept and number of other measures, and to totally polarize the enemy. And then the reversal started, and battles started getting turned into the favor of India. I think there is much more other points I have, but there are some issues which we need to be very, very careful. Every nation which fights the war, there will be certain pluses, certain minuses. Yes. But the nation which has to grow, it has to understand what went wrong so that the corrective measures can be taken in appropriate time. More as we go ahead.
I'd like to bring in Huma over here. Huma, since you've been writing from that time onwards, when the Kargil War took place, so you can just give your quick takes, and then you can also, of course, put in a couple of questions to the gentleman we have here today.
I have been listening to all the three veterans here, and I was just kind of curious at the time when we were also doing reporting. Of course, the way General Ashok Kumar is talking about how there was a, I can't say failure or failure of communication or failure of intelligence. That came through while reporting from the ground in 1999. But moving on, I just want to understand from all of you, we'll start with Brigadier Asthana. Where are we today after Kargil? What have we, whatever we learned from there, where are we now in the 21st century?
I thank you. I think I totally agree with what General Ashok Kumar is saying, that there was, he's been very kind not to call it a total failure, but there was that kind of a failure to even hold ground, to keep track of what is happening in your own territory. And I must add, like Huma said, now what is the situation? Before that, before the Kargil war, actually in February, I was part of a war game, and we were the enemy in that war game in Leh, 3 days. That is the enemy, we had occupied these unheld ridges. We had intruded as deep as Da, where actually eventually I went to evict them as Providence had it. And in that war game, I, who was the enemy commander, was, asked to just, eventually I was even asked to leave the war game hall. And I was not making my own plans. My brigade commander, Brigadier Devinder Singh, who had a great mind of his own, he had made all these plans. Okay. So the writing was on the wall, but perhaps, it didn't gel too well. Next month, that is in end of March and April, a similar war game was held at Srinagar. Again, the commander there was Brigadier Dwinder from the FCNA commander. And the similar plans were played, but well, all these gaps which General Ashok has mentioned and which were exploited by the exercise enemy, we just didn't pay much heed to them. So that is of that stage. What is happening today, I am not very sure because I'm not serving in the army anymore. So I may not be the right person to talk about it, but I will definitely say this. I have been into computerized wargaming. I was commandant of the Wargaming Development Center. So if you have, an impartial kind of a war game, which is not judgmental decision making, but which is, let's say, more logical. Well, we will be able to see all these gaps. We would be able to anticipate. I would say, the purpose of our discussion today, as General Ashok has very, very, very strongly and very clearly put across, is to anticipate, to prepare, and to avoid this kind of a situation, which should never have happened. As I see it, it should never have happened. So much for where we are today. Well, I guess somebody who's in uniform today in that position, he would be able to give us a better answer to that.
Thank you, Brigadier Asthana. General Lakhvinder Singh, sir, what do you think about, the kind of artillery you had at that time in 1999 and, was it enough? Would you have wanted something more or something different? If you can talk about that, please.
Let me talk first about what the General Ashok and Asthana have said. Because what Asthana said is so true that I was part of the war game, which happened in Srinagar. And they occupied this Tiger Hill, other areas, and they were asked to be quiet. This is not possible. So this is a result of a mindset. And I think this is a very basic problem in our training institutions, where it's so patronized that you always want a DS solution to score high. You don't let people think what is to be done. I think earlier we removed this sort of a mindset in the institutions, in the training institutions. We will not produce people who can think. And if you can't think, then you can't think of new things, because what Asthana said should have been taken note of. But what had happened that time? We were euphoric in that first diplomacy, and we thought nothing would happen. And we were only centered around the Mujahideen or the insurgency. And we never thought that they could do any of these things. And even when they came, we only thought they were Mujahideens. And thirdly, in these two things gave a comfort to the Northern Command that opposite Kargil, the whole area was underdeveloped. There was no way the Pakistan army could build up these forces. And that is where Musharraf played a master card. He was audacious, he came in occupied places, and nobody knew about this. But for 4 people in his army, which is a great way of planning. But he was also foolish. He erred. He never understood, realized the resolve or the tenacity of the Indian army to beat him. And at the end of it, he had to face a very humiliating defeat. I want to add one more thing, and maybe this will come later, but I want to add this. I think Indian army needs to change its mindset. We are so defensive in our outlook, that we forget to do what is essential. After Kargil, when we had thrown them out, there's no reason that we did not take preventive action against Pakistan. We had no end game, I don't know if we have planned end game or not planned end game, but we did nothing to teach them that you cannot do this. Now, while you got a pat from America, yes, that you're a very responsible nation, and you did not cross the LOC. But remember, in the whispers, you were a weak nation. You were not able to punish the enemy where you should have punished the enemy. Now, this is also a problem between the higher command and the polity. It is for them to decide, not for the higher command, or not for the polity, but higher commanders to decide, decide what should army do. You cannot always lie low. And to my mind, unfortunately, 3 incidents happened in Vajpayee's time. the Prime Minister Vajpayee's time. And in all three, we went defensive. The first was the hijack of a plane from Kandahar to Amritsar.
Right.
We let it go. I'm surprised. Then happened the attack on our sanctum sanctorium and parliament. We mobilized a complete army, Indian army, and we did nothing but came back. And third, in Kargil, where Pakistan forced us to fight, and they came into a place, and when valid reasons to punish them, we did nothing. Now, if this is your mindset, then I'm afraid you'll always be defensive. You cannot defend every bit of a piece of land. It is not possible. Therefore, you must have the punch in you to tell the enemy, if you do this, I shall teach you a lesson. But a small country like Israel can go to Entebbe airport, fly from there, free their captives and bring them back. And here's a large country, so powerful. And Pakistan is a pipsqueak in front of us. There's nothing. I'm still worried about Pakistan. So I think, first of all, we must change our mindset. And our commanders have to have a lot to do with this. They were convinced the polity that you cannot function like this.
Yeah. Just to bring in a point here, this is very different from what we did in 1971
Yes.
when General Timaya was.
Yes. I can talk about that also. But I think that the Durga of that time, the Prime Minister, whom Vajpayee Sahab called Durga, that Indira Gandhi was very keen in July of 71 to launch an offensive in Bangladesh. And look at this tiger man of ours, the Chief of Army Staff, Sam Manekshaw. He told me, I'm not doing it. I'm not prepared. Right? And I think Easter I will do only once I'm ready. So we're in December. But hats off to Indira Gandhi, who withstood the world pressure, including Kissinger and Nixon, and did not come under pressure and said, we will go for Bangladesh. And this combination of these two people, the fourth threat commander and the strong polity, led us to break Pakistan in two parts. For the first time in the history of warfare after the Second World War, we had changed the geography of the continent. So you need such thought processes and such power. We have power. Our army is very good. It's very professional. It's very experienced. And also, I think we have good commanders. But most of all, we are the best young officers and the soldiers who can do anything what even you thought is impossible.
Yeah. General Ashok, you started this. What do you think of, at the end of it, after listening to Brigadier Asthana's and General Lakhindar's, comments, views, what do you think about this? Though you started this,
subjects are though connected but little different. But I will tell you the, another related and important aspect wherein you have inquired about as to which state we are in today. Now, as I told you earlier, the responsibility of Kargil Brigade then initially was from Jojila up to Chor Batla with 4 infantry battalions. And wherever we had a class 9 axis, though there was no movement between India and Pakistan, 100, 200, 500 portion was disused. But wherever that axis was available, that area was held by an infantry battalion in totality. And that too on both sides. Wherever we had the animal track, we had a company size force deployed on our side and same on Pakistani side. Where we had the foot track, we had a platoon deployed on our side and same on Pakistan. You'll be surprised to know that in the entire Kargil sector, when it was quite enlarged one, there was a mirror deployment of Indian Army and the Pakistan Army on both sides. And between these deployed locations, there were large areas which were the unheld areas, and that too on both sides. It is not that we had unheld and the Pakistan had held. It was just unheld on both sides. And even the areas, which were occupying by platoons in foot track connectivity basis, they were also, a number of them were in the glaciated terrain, which used to be vacated in the winter months when the temperature used to dip down and the ice levels used to go up. Surprisingly, in the winter preceding the Kargil war, the 121 Brigade had tried to delay the winter vacation as long as possible, and they were trying to hold them as late as possible. And statistically, it was one of the maximum time they lived there. But once they came back, and then this thing happened, and why they could not see, that is very important. There were two reasons, to my mind. One is that we were very aggressive on line of control. Aggressive in the sense, if Pakistan fires 100 rounds, we must fire 200 rounds. So there were a lot of firing happening on both sides. So in this sound and disturbance, because what happens if the firing is taking place in the front line, keep underground, keep your head down, think of safety, and your observation, gets compromised. Secondly, unlike today's time, we didn't have that kind of surveillance devices. We didn't have our own satellites. We didn't have drones, UAVs, quadcopters, and long-range day and night devices. Those were not available. So we had a primitive kind of the surveillance setup on both sides. And because of this firing, military could not see much. It could not foresee that something was coming. And others at appropriate level neglected, because though something of this kind should never happen, because military must prepare taking the adversary, always adversary, whether they have to be fought or not. But in 1998, if you recall the event, India detonated nuclear this thing. It was followed by Pakistan. Both the nations were subjected to the sanctions. It was followed by Vajpayee's visit to Lahore in February 1999. So in that kind of bonhomie and ecosystem, people negated that in this kind of system, something of that kind would happen. Despite, and one of the reasons of negating that it was, though Pakistan surprised us, we suffered casualties more than that, but it was just not possible within the capability of Pakistan as a nation to unhinge India at whatever cost, it was possible. But in short time frame, they created an embarrassing situation. And then finally, because of number of things happened with this thing. But today, when I speak to you now, a lot of things have improved. The surveillance coverage has improved. We can see to any depth, both day and night. The tactical inputs are available down to the battalion level. There is hardly any unheld gaps, because an area which was held by an infantry brigade with 4 battalions, a complete division is sitting there. So, of course, it is not on only our side. Pakistan is also one way they forced us to bring in those many troops, but at the same time they are forced to do that from their side also. So both are troops are deployed in a large amount of diversity. Now the weaponry has improved, the better weapons have come, coordination, because now the gaps are not there. So inter-unit coordination, responses, contingency planning, there's a lot of improvement. The infrastructure wise also, there are now number of posts which were not accessible. They were only by the foot porters or animal track. With border area development program, which happened that time, and it is still happening, that coordinated with the op tracks, the things, things have looked up a lot. But there is still a lot to improve, because today, if you, and the thing which is, the single artery which was going from Zojila to Leh, now we have alternatives. We have Rohtang axis, we have also Padam axis being developed. So the vulnerability of the communication axis has also been negated, and substantial amount of tools are there ab initio for any response to be made as compared to earlier. Of course, there are a lot of things which are to be done, but I am sure that will be taken care of in due course of time.
Thank you, sir. Brigadier Asthana, you wanted to say something. I can see you raising your hand. So
no. I just raised my hand because in the middle, the speech of General Ashok was getting cut. So I just wanted to indicate to him. Yeah. But however, now that you said so, there are some very important points which General Ashok and General Lakhvinder has brought out. Just to take it there, General Lakhvinder, sir. I was a soldier on the ground with literally boots on the ground, and this is what we did: hard-fought battles, 10 attacks across a huge canvas of, say, about 16 kilometers of different kinds of ridge lines. Today you are attacking here, sometimes you are attacking elsewhere, and it just went on and on and on for about 80 odd days. We started with probing patrols, like General Ashok had said. Initially, nobody knew what is the extent, what is the strength of the enemy. So when we initially went, every place we went, there was some fire coming. There were clashes after patrol clashes. And when we found that, look, there are a lot more enemy than those so-called 4 or 5 people, 4 or 5 militants, get them back from the scruff of their neck kind of a thing. It was not like that. So what I would like to say is 2 incidents of artillery that I would like to just mention. First was when we were in very close kind of combat, and he was holding on, like General Ashok said, at a little higher place, and we were at a little so-called disadvantage. And there we wanted artillery fire. The gun possession officer who I was in touch with said, look, sir, this fire is going to come on you. And we decided to reduce, instead of 6 guns, there was only 1 gun firing. Only 1 gun. And it was dead accurate. Dead accurate. And very responsive fire. One by one. Literally, we were moving the gun by a few meters here and few meters there. And we were able to really degrade the enemy and then launch the attack, which made so much more sense than just trying to, bravado. So I think the artillery was a definite battle winning factor. The second artillery, there are hundreds of artillery actions which I can talk about, but one more which is my favorite was the last attack, which was on the 25th and 26th night of July. So at night we were attacking a very narrow kind of very tiny post which was called Tekri. And in the middle, the artillery gun which was firing, 1 gun only, that packed up. So now there was no artillery fire. And the gun possession officer, he said, sir, we'll have to, stop the fire because you cannot range a new gun at, 12 o'clock at night. I can't see anything. So I said, no, we must have artillery fire. I'll give you the corrections. I'm on the way up. He says, aapke upar aayega fire. But they were so accurate and so responsive. We could range a gun at about 12 o'clock at night and get the accurate fire on that small little post, which was hardly about 200 meters across at night. But the most important factor is that the gun possession officer, Captain G.P. Singh, who was controlling the fire, I met him many years later. And that time I got to know that when he was controlling the fire, he had suffered a shrapnel attack, a shrapnel in his eye. He was controlling the fire, holding his eye like this, and he was controlling our fire and giving me artillery fire. So much for the artillery. Hats off. And they were definitely
Amazing. I mean, I've heard a very similar account from Captain B.M. Karyappa also. Who was
he was with us in the same attack.
Exactly. So I mean, to hear this again, it really makes
it gives you goosebumps.
Goosebumps, absolutely. Yes.
And
He's silent. He's not saying anything. He's just listening to us.
In fact, I was traveling in a train from Delhi to Hyderabad, and I heard somebody on the next compartment. It was an AC2 tire. And as I came to the aisle to see who this gentleman was, he also got up and he came. And both of us pointed at each other like this. And I said, is that GP? He said, is that Amal, sir? Because we had been on radio, but this is the first time we were meeting in a train. I think that was somewhere around 10 years later. So it was just because of this, because of the radio communication and voice recognition, we could identify each other, never having met in a train.
General Rapinder, Bofors played a very crucial role in the taking back of Tiger Hill and other points during the Kargil War. Do you think today we are at a much more capable level than we were then?
I think what Asthana answered the question. I'm not a serving soldier, so I think so. But I have a few other points to make. Because artillery is not which is going to show courage and the dynamism what Asthana saying and charging at the bunker, but in the overall perspective, I have something to say. First, there's some regions of the world where technology has not touched them. So I see a lot of people talking about technology in the altitude, technology in warfare. You have to tread very carefully. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So you have to be very careful on the subject word technology. We have technological geeks talking about technology all over the place. In the altitude area, there's some things of technology don't work, some work. So you have to be very careful. Pakistan had that ANTP-37 radar, which I'm not too sure it worked or not. We made a big hullabaloo about it, it's firing on us. I think more than them, it was the agents who had come inside and firing at us. Because remember, the gun located radars works in principle of picking up two points, one will ascending and one will descending artillery. And if you have high hills in front of you, there's no way you can pick up the ascending arc of the fire. So I'm not too sure of technology that will work. Then Israel sent us some high-end technology for surveillance on the borders. And we tried it out. You see, they said if the speed of man is from 7 miles per hour to above, it will pick up. We tried. It is not possible to get the speed in the mountains. We are literally crawling. And while the vehicles were there, the technology worked. So, but it did not work. We discarded the technology because it won't work. So there are things in the altitude areas which are very careful. I think at the end of the day, two things work in altitude area: maneuver and firepower. Maneuver by the infantry, light infantry, and firepower by any means. The second point I want to say is the preeminence of firepower. You see, we have to give up the age-old Second World War and the charge of light brigade attitude. We cannot afford to lose our soldiers. So therefore, the firepower must beat them down so much that they become irrelevant. And that's what the artillery brigade did there. I will talk about it later more about this. But it was not so simple because having seen the magnitude of the difficulty, we experimented. And we took one Bofor guns to a place called Tololing. Tololing was a point which was the closest to the road axis. And it was not the highest either. But we took a guns to Tololing and we said if at the time of Babur and Akbar, they could fire artillery in the face of enemy, why can't we use such high-ended guns to more effectively? So we got them there, we put them there on the road spot, and we put the best layer there. The layer called Avtar Singh. He looked like a carpenter, but his hands were as steady as a surgeon. So at that time, the grenadiers had occupied. They had entrenched around the Tololing Heights. We asked them to please give us space, and we fired Tololing on the Bofor of Tololing, and the round fell bang on the spot there. And we fired many rounds thereafter. And there was a place called Barbad Bunker, which had killed both the officers and many casualties. And the 18 grenadiers said, we can hear shouts from them, "Hame bachao, yahan par kehar barsa." We told the CO grenadiers, make use of it and go and attack. But I think it suffered too much. He did not make use of this. So thereafter, we also had set a concept. It's not only Bofors alone. A lot of people think that Bofors alone won the war for us. But they contributed, not Bofors alone. We started a concept, as Asthana said, 100-gun concept. We fired so much on the enemy that enemy was at become irrelevant on this objective. So we started a concept of firing on the guns and then firing direct firing guns to totally annihilate the enemy there. So to this instrument of war, the Pakistan soldiers had no solution but fear and helplessness. Every time we fired on them, right from Tololing onwards, and wherever. I was not in the sector where my friend Asthana was there, so I cannot talk much about it. But in the last sector, every time we fired with them, and every time we heard transmission, "Hame bachao, yahan par kehar bars raha." Save us, the hell is raining on us. And every time the infantry reached there when the shake and distance enemy. First we pulverized them with 100 guns, and then with direct firing guns, we reached the infantry within 100 meters, 60 meters of the enemy positions. So infantry and firepower are very essential in the mountains. So I think we will need to change the concept. The concept is not to suffer casualties. Our concept is to kill the enemy and make them give them this pain of doing such erroneous things. One more thing I want to say. It is not only in mountains. I think the firepower has taken preeminence world over. You see what's happening in Ukraine? The maneuver has lost its pace. The air force become redundant. It is the HIMARS which are firing and making life hell for everything. So, and because the artillery round cannot be misguided, it can't be altered in flight. It's a dead bomb. And so therefore it's time the Indian Army start thinking of giving a right prominence to firepower. I'm not saying artillery firepower. It can be machine gun, can be mortars, can be air force. Unfortunately, in Kargil, the air force was not so effective for different reasons. Not that they were bad soldiers, but if the same air force using planes, they would be very effective. My third point is this general touched on the subject before. This mindset of long wars and short wars. They start out with Kargil, and the people Helmer Fair thought there could never be long wars. I think it's a folly. We are surrounded by two enemies, Pakistan and China, and both they were jointly taking this on. So to say there will be no long wars, look at what's happened in Ukraine and Russia. Russia thought that they can finish off Ukraine in a matter of days. And now the situation is going like China, India, and Pakistan. The same situation. They've reached a stalemate. They don't know what to do. So we cannot let our guard down and not prepare for long war. There could be a situation where we could face both the enemies and we will have to fight the war. We should be ready for that. And one more thing I want to tell you, and I want to add on what I added last time to our defensive mindset. You know what happened in Kargil? After taking our territory, we have deployed one reserve division to safeguard that area. We lost a reserve division for offensive operations after having deployed them. Is that the way of guarding our borders? I insist, and I always tell everybody, you must bring the offensive spirit in you and must teach enemy a lesson. Don't start a war, but if you start a war, then finish it to your advantage. So not about artillery. Because I wanted to give you an overall picture of what I felt about Kargil war and deeply involved in that.
No, absolutely.
Right? Now about
artillery. Yes.
Artillery also is a terrific weapon system. What we suffered in Kargil was the long-range observation and action of fire. And of course, what the journalist said, that the polity tied our hands down behind our backs, not to cross the LC. So wherever we had the long-range weapon system in Bofors, but we could not effectively use it beyond the visual range. There was no way of doing it. People talk about, I do hear people talking about the aviation squadrons and air force and all that. They were rendered helpless in the face of SAM-6 missiles, Stinger missiles deployed on the borders. They could not fly. So I think there is first two things should never happen. The politicians should never intervene in war. They have no idea what they're doing. Leave it to generals. And second is that we need to acquire technology which can do so also in the high altitude areas. Because there, the technology sometimes doesn't work. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, General Ravinder. In fact, we're running out of time. So, I would like to kind of just sum this up right here. If any of you all have any quick last comments. Yes.
One more point.
Go ahead, General, and then I'll go to Brigadier Asthana as well after that. Yes.
I have a different statistics on casualties. Right? What the journal said, maybe as some source, I have a different source. In the ratio when you work out of the war wasted rates in the plain area, you work out a calculation of 1:3. That 1 loss of defenders, 3 loss of the attacker. Am I right, Asthana?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So in altitude, it could be anything up to 1:6. That is, you would lose 6 people for they're losing 1 person. Now, working by this statistics, and interpolating, if Pakistan lost 800 people, we should have lost 4,800 people. But surprisingly, we lost 525 people, lesser than that. And I was very happy to be part of it because I was able to, instead of sending body bags to their houses, we were able to send these people alive to meet the people, meet the families. That made us very, very satisfying thing. So I think with use of this fire weapons and firepower, we could alter the equation in future wars too. Thank you.
Brigadier
I
Sam.
just want to make a quick
Yes,
point.
General Ashok Kumar. Yeah.
It is little in difference with what General Lakwinder has said. Actually, 1:3 ratio in planes is, attacker versus defender ratio. That, if you have to capture a company position, you have to have at least 3 companies attacking there. Mountains, it goes to 6-1, 8-1, that kind of thing, force level required. But this ratio is not related to casualties. That for 1 casualty as defender, you have 3 casualties of attacker. Invariably, the casualties on attacker side are higher, but these ratios are the ratios where the quantum of forces required to attack are determined as a yardstick, for capturing a location. Just a point,
I have no comments.
Okay. Brigadier Sam, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to share some, visuals before we go on.
Sure.
And even before that, I would like to say that initially, what both our eminent speakers have spoken is extremely relevant. When we started, people were not ready to listen to us and say that, look, in this place, there are so many people or not. I was given an order to clear Kargil, clear. There should be nobody left up to the line of control in 3 days. We were given exactly 3 days. I asked for artillery fire for my first attack, first formal attack. Others were patrol clashes and so on. And I was told, these are the words, Amul, you think there is a war on? You're asking for artillery? Now, as both are artillery officers, you know the importance of artillery. That is the kind of level we were at in the initial days. That's about 10th and 11th of May. It was preposterous to be asking for artillery. What? There are 4 or 5 people. I was saying there are not 400 or 500 here. I, with a small tolly, was in contact with 4 different ridge lines spread out across 3 days of march. And we were left with just 3 radio sets. We had only 3 radio sets, which we had borrowed from here and there, because the unit never had any of its own equipment. All our casualties, initial casualties, were lying where they were. There was no way to evacuate them, whether dead or wounded, because there was no backup. And unlike, let's say, Tololing or Tiger Hill, which were close to the roadhead, we were at least 12 to 36 hours away from the roadhead. Nobody could ever reach there, whether it's a helicopter or it's a human being. So now I just want to share who were our saviors. I hope you can see that.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
It was when the local, porters and their very, very capable donkeys, they started coming. We could get food. The first resupply of food from the 8th we got was on 18th. First 10 days, we were totally on your own. And you had literally got off buses and ran up, in small packets, trying to reach someplace which was 16,000 something feet. I would also, I just want to share this because it's important for all of us. This is the kind of terrain that you had, and this is much later in July when the snow had melted. So in this kind of a terrain, when a soldier is climbing, the greater importance of, firepower is very, very important. I'm just taking you through, not giving much of a history of each So these we are, going through one by one, one by one. This is, I must salute my youngster, Captain Manoj Kumar Pandey, who was Paramvir Chakra posthumous. He fought so many battles before Kalubar, where he was finally martyred. That is Kukkarthang, Jobar, 5203. These were huge battles which he had fought, and then got martyred in Kalubar battle. This is, I'm just giving you, if you can see the arrows going up here and there. So there were a series of attacks, 10 attacks over a long ridge line. This is the kind of bunkers which the enemy had. Of course, you can see a number of dead lying all over the place. I'll again say most of them were artillery casualties, or a few of them were bullet wounds. The rest were all kukri casualties. I'm proud to say that. This is the
right. It was almost hand to hand over there in many of the battles.
This, and in that time I had a hotshot old camera which didn't pack up. I had a good high-tech kind of a camera which packed up the very first day because of the snow and rain. But the old manual, no flash, no battery, nothing, that camera survived, and all these pictures are from that particular camera. Like I said, the dead were lying all over the place. We never could collect them or count them because we were launching one after the other. There was no break between one attack to the next. Because the moment you capture one place, he is firing from the next. He is firing from the next. So we covered an area of about 4 ridge lines and about 15 kilometers worth over a period of time. I'm just sharing some of the pictures. You can see this. This is another very famous place where the enemy was on top, but we scaled up these cliffs, which you can see on this side. Right under his nose by daylight. Because
night. Did you just change the slide? But yes, you can see.
So this is the kind of terrain which we are talking about. You can see a number of cliffs, like General Ashok Kumar had mentioned regarding the SAM and Stinger missile. In fact, this is the post from where it was fired. We were watching from another post, and my Johnny said, "Sir, tyo post capture karnu padcha." It was way out. We saw the Stinger, and Ajay Ahuja's aircraft came down. We not only captured this post, but we killed its post commander, a major from the frontier force. He had an English handwritten diary in which he says on 26th of May, dated 26th of May, "Today we shot down an Indian MiG. CO and I went to look at the wreckage," and so on and so forth. So this is where we captured, can you see
Yes.
Yeah. So this is the Stinger and a number of gas masks, because perhaps, we don't know, you could gauge the numbers of the post by the number of gas masks which you captured. So wonder why they had gas masks. Perhaps they were planning to use something or not. But we didn't face any chemicals. This is another story which I have to tell you. Sorry, I'll take two more minutes.
Sure, absolutely.
As I mentioned in the beginning, when we went up, our own equipment, jo unit ka apna niji equipment hota hai, that is radio sets, maps, machine guns, mortars, medical staff, all that is taken away from you, and you're sitting in buses and going. When you get off from those buses, all you have is your rifle. No maps, no radios, no telephones, no line, nothing. This is what we went up with. But unfortunately, things were not coming up either. So I was able to send a small slip, if you can see this extreme left,
note, yes,
with a message down to my Lord Manifest NCO who was in Leh, who gave a call to my wife in separated family quarters in Delhi, who went ahead, and she knew what to get because I talked to her much earlier. She knew ki is type ka phone chahiye inko. And you see this one in the center, the black phone. Yes. She went down to Chandni Chowk, bought 14 of these telephones, but how to send them. So she knew where the load manifesting takes place behind Palam. There's a place called Technical Area. She went out there. She would stand there at about, the load manifest takes place between 3 and 4 a.m. She was there with her 2 kids. She got these telephones, asked officers, please, can you take 1, take 2, take 3? And when it came back, my Lord Manifest NCO Bhanu would pick up these telephones, send them back, and somebody or the other climbing up would get it to me in wherever we were. That's how we got 14 telephones to start with. That's how we got boots. That's how we got jerry cans, medicines, and so on. So this is one story I want to say, that I was fully supported by my better half at the home front. So I think that is what I have to say. Just one more, please. I thought we were the greatest guys fighting the battle and so on,
Yeah.
When I reached Pune, there was thousands of people to receive us. One of those people who wanted to take pictures with us, I happened to, ask, who are you? Because they were not well dressed like the rest. They were looking very, down. They said that, Saab, we have also donated to the Kargil fund. We have all collected, and 1.5 lakhs we have donated to the Kargil fund. I asked, who are you? They said, sir, we are a beggars association of southern Pune. So patriotism lies not in your and my blood alone. It is even with that beggar whom we have no respect for. This is India, this is our country, and these are our people. We were supported by the whole country, the whole nation, everyone, even a beggar. This is what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Brigadier Asthana. I mean, that really is a good note to end this session on. And I think during this discussion, we've seen how there was so much of close combat up front, there was lack of equipment, lack of communication, a lot of things that happened in Kargil at that point of time. But I think today we are in a much better position, and let's hope we don't have to face something like that all over again. And on this day, let's also remember the 527 martyrs of Kargil and the service that they have done to our country as well. So yes, on that note, gentlemen, I salute you as well. Thank you so much for your contribution to India's safety. Thank you so much for joining us on Financial Express.
Thank you, Roshan. Thank you very much.
Jayan, and thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, General Lakwinder, sir. Thank you, General Ashok Kumar, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Then
Thank you.
thanks to Financial Express. Thank you, Uma. Thank you,
sir.
Roshan.